I guess we are live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Great to get together here. Before starting, I did have a look at, it's an amazing world we live in. I look at the people who were there waiting, and so I see that we have, I don't know, I know that Michael Respicio is from the Philippines, but I don't know where Michael is located. We have Mateus from Brazil. We have Joseba from Spain, Astem from Kazakhstan, Edwin from, I think he's Canadian, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's an amazing world that we can be sort of meeting with people from all over the world, meeting with each other, chatting with each other. And of course, the world speaks lots of languages. And never in my experience, in my life, has it been easier to learn languages and explore languages and through languages, travel around the world. And so today I want to talk about learning more than one language at the same time, because it's something that I get asked about all the time, and something that for a long time I said, no, it's not a good idea, because you need to focus on one language. You need to bring so much intensity to the task, because you have to change, basically you have to change things in your brain, and that the sort of white heat of focus on a language, bombarding your brain with input in the new language, listening to it, reading it, reviewing words in it, speaking it, is just forging a new sort of control center, language control center in your brain. Because after all, it's particularly when you start out, if you're a speaker of only one language, your brain is now sort of structured to be able to speak that one language. So the new language is a major disruption. It's got different sounds, different structures, and of course you resist, accepting these different ways of saying things. And by the time you get to your third language, you're just a little more flexible. But still, I found, and certainly that was my experience with my first languages, French and then Mandarin Chinese, and then with Japanese, that I needed a lot of focus in order to make these changes happen in my brain, so that I could then naturally become, comfortable in the language. But now, after all, I'm doing two languages. So what I'm doing and what the advantages or disadvantages are of focusing on one or doing two, and then we can have some discussion on the subject. So if I had to write an exam in French, Chinese, Arabic, or whatever, like right now I'm doing Arabic and Persian, but if I knew that I had to write an exam in one of those languages, I would totally focus on one language. So you will achieve more over the same period of time if you focus on one language. I definitely believe that. And if I had, 3 hours a day, 5 hours a day, the more hours a day, the greater the intensity, the better I will learn, and the greater range of activities. If I have to study 5-6 hours a day, I would vary my activities. I can't just read and listen for 5-6 hours a day. I would do more reviewing of vocabulary. I would do more writing. I would do more speaking. I would do more translating. I would do more different things in order to bring some variety into, but still remaining focused on the one language. But I'm not in that situation. I don't need Arabic for my work. I don't need Arabic for school. So I am learning these languages purely out of interest, purely out of a desire to explore parts of the world that have been not so familiar to me. And I find that fascinating. I have a completely different perspective now on the Arab world, or the history of Persia and the Iranian world. And I'm exploring the language, and I'm enjoying doing two. And the advantage of doing two is that there is a little more variety. So part of the problem, say in Arabic, is the lack of intermediate material. So you get tired of either listening to or reading the same beginner material for the umpteenth time, or sort of beating your head against difficult content where there are lots of unknown words and you listen and still don't understand. So it's kind of nice, refreshing to leave that and then say I'm doing that in Arabic, and then I go off to Persian. Persian also has the advantage of being a lot easier. It's just structurally closer to European languages. It's easier to read. So it's kind of nice. So I'll do the Persian for, and so as I've explained before, I go Arabic for 3.5 days or so, and then I go Persian. So I'm happy to kind of retreat back to Persian, which is easier. And then after a while, I kind of anxious to once again take Arabic. And so I think this variety keeps things fresh for me. And yet at the same time, I'm moving along less quickly in both of them than if I, were focused on one. But it really doesn't matter because, somebody commented, I think on Twitter that they had been encouraged by me, that they were a monolingual English speaker, had serious doubts about being able to learn Russian. And then I talk about the need for patience and the fact that we will eventually get there. And so I feel the same way when I'm doing 2 languages. So I'm going a little more slowly in each of those languages, but it doesn't matter. The language isn't going anywhere. There's no deadline. I can continue to explore them. I was listening to an Arabic podcast this morning while preparing breakfast. So I'm picking out words that I didn't know before, words, from politics or economics and stuff. So I still don't understand the whole thing, but I'm picking out more words. So I said to myself, well, I know those words that I didn't know before. I just have to continue to pick away at it, gradually acquiring more words. And I made the reference in the previous video to the sort of jigsaw puzzle. So as more words slot into place, more things will become clear. So I'm not in a hurry. And some of the advantages, like I tweeted on this, you sometimes hear people in the language teaching community writing about false friends, as if this is some great problem, that there are loan words or words, say if you have languages of the same language family, sometimes the word will have different meanings. The similar word will mean something different in different languages, and that these are false friends. We think they're a friend, we think we know them, and in fact we don't know them. But I think false friends are a tremendous advantage. When I see Arabic loan words in Persian, I then find it easier to remember those words because I know roughly what they mean, even if the specific meaning in Persian is different. And so with enough exposure to Persian, enough exposure to different contexts and content items, I'll start to sort of define more and more how that word is used in Persian, what the meaning is. So it doesn't matter to me that I might get it wrong the first time. If I meet it enough times in different contexts, I'll eventually figure out what it is. But on the other hand, it's a lot easier to remember. So false friends are actually a good thing, unless you're trying to speak too early. And obviously there will always be things from other languages that influence us. It might be our own language. And we always get the structure wrong because we're influenced by our own language. So what? None of that matters to me. Language is all about communication with errors. So in terms of how to study 2 languages, what I chose to do this time was to, as I say, half the week on one, half the week on the other. In both cases, there's a lot of work required in terms of finding content. So I had to invest some time over the weekend. I took, because I bought Asimil for Persian, which is actually quite good. It's better than the Arabic. The Arabic Asimil is full of very, I would say, when you're learning a language, you don't want to get too far into the culture, some poet from the 15th century or some festival or, and 3 different degrees of relatives and aunts and uncles and stuff. To me, that's sort of too much into the culture too early is not so good for language learning. It's easier to deal with familiar scenarios. Get up in the morning, drink coffee, go to work, in the car, you watch television. So things that we already know, that we're familiar with from other languages, use those as your language learning material. So in that sense, assimil with Arabic became too esoteric and trying to be funny and cute, whereas the Persian assimil is much more sensible, in my opinion. So I enjoy the Persian assimil much more than the Arabic assimil. So I took the lessons 30 and above, because there's very few unknown words in the first, even the first 40 lessons now for me in Persian assimil. But I then put them on this Vocalmatic website, got them transcribed, and I uploaded them into my own personal account. I can't share them. So I have now up to 85 lessons from assimil waiting for me in Persian. So in Persian, I've got the Persian online, lots of good stuff. I've got the assimil waiting there. So I have a lot of material that is there. I can go to it anytime. In Arabic, I have our many stories. I have who is she. I have assimil, but I don't like it. And then I have these podcasts that are a little difficult. So I try to vary it, bounce back and forth. The other thing is with Persian now, I'm speaking once a week because I have a lot of good content to work through. With Arabic, I'm now speaking twice a week because I have, with a tutor, because I think I have better comprehension in Arabic, but I do need to speak, and Arabic has more issues of, verbs and masculine and feminine and tenses and how the verbs change, which I find more difficult. So I find it's good to try and produce these things, and then I get a report back, and then I start, trying to look for these different forms when I'm listening and reading. So to that extent, I have a slightly different strategy in Arabic than I have in Persian. Before I forget to, I have been asked to look at the profile of a learner who sent me his username at LingQ. And so therefore, before we go to questions, I'm going to share the screen, and let's just see here and show you what one of our learners. Okay, share screen and start screen share. So this is learner Tudu Toadfoot, who is learning Japanese. So I looked at the last 6 months. So his known words total is a little below the target. He has created lots of links. He has learned, half the target number. He has listened 60 hours compared to 90 hours. He's done a lot of reading, which is very good. He has done an awful lot of writing, which is tremendous, and has spoken 2.2 hours. So, this would be very different from my profile. I would have far fewer hours of speaking, although that's not true in Arabic. I'll look up my numbers a little bit later. Listening hours, that's good. I'm surprised that I think there are no, like normally if you're learning a language like the European language where there are a lot of words that are easily identifiable, then your sort of incidental known words total would be much higher. Not the case in Japanese, where you kind of have to learn them all individually because they're not really related to anything, not identifiable as being similar to words in European languages, at least. If we look at, say, the last 3 months, which has been our sort of 90-day challenge period, known words total is increasing. He's creating a lot of links, lots of links learned, 60 hours of listening, 169,000 words of reading. That's amazing. Still a lot of writing, and speaking is right up there. So I'm very impressed with basically the activity level. And a lot of these statistics are largely a reflection of your activity, because if you stay active, you're going to learn. And I think that's one thing that I really, really believe. Like, I'm not in any rush with Arabic or Persian, but I know that if I keep doing it, I will only get better. And similarly here, this person, Tudu Toadfoot, is very active. And if you are active, you're going to do well. So just for the fun of it, let's see where we are here. If I go to my Arabic, if I go to my profile here, so this is for the last 7 days. So you'll see that, and we're looking here at known words. So as I indicated, I work hard on Arabic, and I go into Persian, and then I go back to Arabic. And so for the last week, I haven't picked up many known words. I'm largely going over older material, or I'm going into difficult content where I'm not picking up any incidental known words, creating a lot of links. The listening, I don't know, that's not very much. I should be doing more. Reading, no writing, 2 hours of speaking. Let's look at the last 3 months. So here again, lots of links learned, not so many incidental known words. 33 hours of listening. I'm certainly not as good as Toadfoot. However, I am doing 2 languages and not doing as much reading. One thing with Arabic, I'm having to read the same lesson over and over again, so I'm not getting credit for that because I forget. I could add it when I read it for the second time. We have a little plus sign in there. I could add. If I look at, that's the known words. If I look at my listening, again, it's the same. It's cumulative. It's, of course, increasing. But in the last little while, I haven't been listening to a lot of Arabic. Last 7 days, let's go, last 30 days. So that's kind of what it looks like. If I go to my Persian here, you lost your streak, repair your streak. Sure, why not? You don't have okay, too bad. All right. So if I go to my profile here, and these are known words. So the known words are increasing, but let's go to the last 30 days. So here again, last week, let's go for the 3-month period here. So known words again, because it's not a related language, not so many incidental known words, lots of links created, lots of links learned, lots of listening, lots of reading, lots of speaking, but no writing. So yeah, that's just an example of my level of activity. We're going to stop this now. And all right, so now let's see what sorts of questions we might have here. Now. All right. I'm learning Kazakh. Wow. Wow. One day, maybe. Rancho Cucamonga, California. I'm not sure where that is, but it's got to be near here because I'm in Palm Springs. Hello from Georgia. We had someone offer from Georgia to get some Georgians together to do the mini stories in Georgian. So if we get that up there, I will certainly let you know. Annyeonghaseyo from South Korea, Turkey. I'm getting there. Someday I will learn Turkish. My wife watches this Turkish soap opera on Netflix. Hello from Taiwan. Okay, India. Wow. Okay, focusing on the challenge. Do you have any advice to learn Swedish? I get asked this question all the time. I mean, my advice, where I learn languages, is at LingQ. And I talk all the time about how to learn. It's listening and reading. We have content for Swedish at LingQ. That's obviously going to be what I recommend. I'm from China. Okay, I'm studying English and Chinese. I started reading English books. I don't know. How many words do I need to know to read on Chinese? Okay, well, if you're going to read Chinese, first of all, you need a lot of characters. But, I would try it. I have, even if I'm working primarily at LingQ, at least for languages where I can read them, like, say, when I was doing Polish, even though I couldn't, there were a lot of unknown words, I could pick up a Polish book because variety is nice. So while it's fun to do you know, to work on the iPad with LingQ and looking at words. It's easier, but then it's also nice to read a book, paper book. But you have to explore yourself. Get yourself a Chinese book and see how well you do. Why have you lost hope? But I'm from Brazil. I don't know anybody who's fluent, only teachers. I'm a native Spanish speaker. I still make mistakes and learn new things. Okay, false friends and start going. Okay. So have you found that you struggle with listening more than reading? What is your advice beyond listening more and easy material? I'm high intermediate. Okay. Obviously, listening is more difficult than reading. I can read something online, you know, on my iPad. Even if I don't look up the words, when I'm reading it, I have more time. I can understand it. When I listen, sometimes I don't. Although I think now in both Persian and Arabic, I hear the words. I hear the sounds, but I just don't know the words. And the only solution is just to continue. I found that in time you understand more and more. And I like to read what I listen to. I listen, I don't understand, I read it, and then I go listen again. And it's simply a matter of continuing doing that. It's easy to seem fluent, but it's hard to be fluent. Fluent doesn't mean perfect. Fluent means that you can enjoy a conversation, feel comfortable in the conversation, that the person speaking to you, with you, feels comfortable speaking with you, and you make mistakes and you look for words. But that's, to my mind, it's all fluent. Now, to some extent, there's fluent, very fluent, extremely fluent, but yeah. So I don't know what the meaning of seem fluent, but hard to be fluent, especially if you focus on comprehension. So there are people who might sound fluent, but they don't understand what you're saying. That's not fluency. Fluency means you understand what the person is saying. If anything, your comprehension should be better than your ability to speak, because you can always make mistakes and struggle to say things, but if you don't understand what the person is saying, it's very hard to have a conversation. Can you show us the report that you talk about getting from your language partner? Also, how do you decide what to discuss in Arabic and Farsi? Okay, let me show you a report. Now, just a second here. And we're gonna click, bingo. All right, so if I go to tutors here, and I look at my activities. So here I've lined up a bunch of, conversations, and then I get my conversation report. So let's look at let's view report. So here's a report from my Persian tutor. So she writes down, most of you can't read this, she writes down a bunch of sentences, and she adds the audio. I then import this. Now I already have it imported, but I'll import it again just to show you. So this now comes in as a lesson. Okay, now there are no more blue words here because I've already been through it, but I can listen to it.
لطفاً صبر کن. فامیل. نمیدونستم.
Okay, so I can listen to it while looking at it. I can listen to it away from the computer. I save it to a playlist. I can look at it, here. Lots of words there. Now I can go sentence view, or I can go this. Wait a second here. So, and it's just content for me. So I study it, and obviously you can see by the number of words and phrases that I have saved here, it's full of good stuff for me. So now let us go back. Now where does this? I'm not sure that worked. Did that work? Desktop 2. I think it never worked. So let's start again. So this is sorry about that. Let me just make sure this. All right, again, So yeah, let's go again, tutors. I go to my activities and I go to a conversation report here. Conversation report, view report. And here are all those phrases. There's the audio there. And I click to import and it opens up as a lesson. So there you have it. Okay, let's go stop. All right, there, I think that was a little better. Sorry for the confusion. All right, now, it is always a pleasure, blah, blah, blah. Can you show the report? And how do I decide what to discuss in Arabic and Farsi? We just talk about anything, whatever comes up. A good tutor is able to direct you to talk about things that are of interest to you. On occasion, especially earlier on, and even to some extent now in Arabic, we read together because it's so difficult to read, because it's not like the Latin alphabet. It's there's not a sort of obvious way how to pronounce a new word. If you have an hour a day for Chinese, how much time would you spend on characters? Okay, you only have an hour a day. Well, all I can say is when I was doing it, I was spending half an hour to an hour a day on characters, but I had 7 hours a day. Now, if I have an hour a day, I think I would probably bunch it up. I'd go an hour on characters every 3 days, but then do a lot of listening and reading so that I'm constantly being exposed to the language, and in the reading, exposed to the characters. Oli Richards has a good series on YouTube of all the steps he took to learn Italian, all the way through to going to Italian. You might want to watch it. Is fluency equal to being able to speak your target language as well as you speak English, or very near? No, certainly not. You don't, I speak French very well. I don't speak French as well as I speak English. I have very good comprehension, but obviously it's English is just natural. Okay, so fluent is, how big is the gap? Well, use the European Common Framework. Absolute fluency, if you're an educated person, is C2 and C2 plus. And fluency to me is B2. So there's a long gap in terms of comprehension, in terms of your ability to express yourself precisely without having to work around the words that you're comfortable using. So there's a big difference. What's the average period to learn a language? First, there's just too much vagueness there. Average, how many hours a day, learn a language, which language, how well do you learn the language? I always find these questions about how long does it take and so forth, not that helpful. Get engaged in a language, get learning it, get liking it, and you will continue to improve. I always forget the t-shirts. Okay. What's the average period time? I'm a native English speaker learning 3 new languages, Russian, Japanese, and recently Hungarian, while actively maintaining Spanish. Okay, well, you are a hard worker. Children's shows for beginners. I don't like children's shows. I don't like children's stories. I'm not that interested in them. And they're not necessarily easier because there's a lot of vocabulary that's not relevant to me as an adult. Annyeonghaseyo. Okay, привет из Belarus. Okay, all right. You clearly have too high definition. As Steve said, fluency doesn't mean profession. How to get most out of the tutors? Well, it's an opportunity to speak more than anything else. So don't have the tutor do all the speaking. Let the tutor give you a chance to speak. Force yourself to talk about things that are difficult for you to talk about because you don't have the vocabulary. And when you get the report back from your tutor, you'll be able to work on those words and phrases. It's an opportunity to create some content that you can use. Don't worry about making mistakes. Basically, that's it. Most of the tutors suggest that thinking in English or speakers have in English the right way to improve English. How can we identify? Okay, all this business about, try to force yourself to think in the language you're learning, I don't agree with. There's a natural progression. And initially we translate from our own language or from a language we're more familiar with. And in time, we do less and less of that. It's not really something that we can control. It's something that naturally happens if we have enough sort of input in the language, enough listening and reading, enough vocabulary. Gradually, we start to produce these phrases naturally. It's not something we can consciously do. You said word density is lower in movies and shows, but is that ever offset by time saved by getting meaning through visual cues? Yeah. I mean, what are you trying to achieve with the movie? If you're trying to understand the movie, you understand a fair amount through visual cues. But if you're hoping that the language is going to stick with you, I have found that, yeah, there's some benefit. You hear some word and then the visual cue helps you understand what that word is and you pick it up. But I find that I have to see a word, I have to hear it, I have to see it. And to that extent, listening and reading is more efficient, not to mention the fact that it's more portable. I can't be watching a movie while driving a car, for example. I mean, when it comes to meet a tutor, how to get the most out of him, as I say, just let the tutor bring the language out of you. It's on the tutor. The tutor's getting paid in most cases. So the tutor has to get you to speak, has to find things of interest, keep the conversation going, be encouraging. Not, some tutors will express a sort of, impatience if you get something wrong. That's very bad. The tutor has to make you feel comfortable. And if your tutor isn't doing that, find another tutor that encourages you, that gets you talking, and it's more on the tutor. Hi, Steve. I'm learning Greek. Do you have any tips or advice? Well, I learned Greek at LingQ. I paid to have our mini stories translated and recorded. We have a fair amount of content on Greek at LingQ. I would go there, and my advice is always the same: lots of listening and reading. And I love learning Greek, and I learned it up before going to visit Crete. I tried to cancel LingQ so often, but it doesn't work. Okay, you'll have to contact customer support. Lots of people cancel every day. Every day we have new people joining and some people canceling. It's not difficult to do, but if you have an issue, please contact customer support at LingQ. Talk Febrile video. Should I learn to read in Arabic first of all? I mean, it's impossible to understand anything at LingQ if I can't read the text. Yeah, I mean, I struggled with this. So I downloaded a bunch of stuff on the Arabic script, and at first it's extremely difficult. Like so much in language learning, I'll never get over this. This is impossible. Arabic script, it's got the different form depending on whether it's the beginning or the middle or the end of the word. Now, I don't even notice those things. I just know what the letter is. May not know how to pronounce it, or I may not know the vowel in there. I may not be able to pronounce the word accurately, but I know the letters. So you just have to go through it. What I found very helpful initially was writing. So for example, I used the dictation function in our activities, set up my Arabic keyboard on my iPad, and I had to type the Arabic. And so you just have to put in the time. But yeah, you have to work on learning to read. But you can do that in conjunction with, the content at LingQ. Oh, take a deep breath. How to get enthusiastic about learning French from scratch. How to get enthusiastic. I mean, you have to find something about the language that interests you, or a person, movie, music, something that'll make you enthusiastic. You can't force enthusiasm. Okay. Chinese characters. How many would you learn by rote before you try to learn them through reading? Well, I don't know about rote, but I had 1,000 characters that I worked very deliberately at learning. The 1,000 most frequent characters. I had cardboard flashcards, and I had a whole system of reviewing them and writing them. And I deliberately went at learning those first 1,000 characters. But I was reading and listening at the same time. Steve，谢谢你传播回答我们的问题。Okay. Hi, Steve. I have a conversation, I think, 1 year ago. I believe my English improved so much since then. Okay. Now, how do you balance your time on reading, listening, and reviewing words? Largely a matter of mood of the moment. Obviously, if I have deliberate time, I'm going to read and possibly review after every page in a lesson. The rest of my learning time is in the car, doing dishes, working out, wherever I am, and I have my AirPod plugged in my ear. I'm now not, no, I don't at the present time work as a tutor. Could you give me some tips for learning French? I mean, all these tips on how to learn, basically, it's not specific to any language. It's the same idea. With French, you have to focus on the fact that the sort of liaison, you know, quant à nous, whereas it's, you know, what would be like, whereas the ending might be on, if there's a T there, it's done, it carries on to the next. You got to really get a handle on the liaison sounds from one word to the next. And another, I think people don't necessarily focus on is that the E is actually an E. So that sound carries through in French pronunciation. There's a lot of I can't get into detail here, but fundamentally, there's no difference. Learning French, learning Chinese, they're all the same. Can you get fluent in a language without going to the country? People say that you can call yourself good if you can live in the zoo with the animals. Okay. You can get fluent in a language without going to the country. I believe that when I lived in Hong Kong, I learned Mandarin to a level B2 at any rate. So fluent. I was quite comfortable. I could go into China to the Canton Trade Fair in 1969, 1970, and translate for Canadian businessmen who were up there doing business with China. I wrote a book on language learning, and I went to China and gave speeches to Chinese universities, leading language schools, you know, Beijing Huayu Xueyuan, Huadong Daxue, Zhejiang Daxue. These are universities, and I met students there who had never been out of China, who were absolutely fluent in English, Japanese, French. And yet I meet Chinese immigrants in Canada who've been there for 30 years and can't speak English. So it's not a function of where you are. It's obviously an advantage if you're surrounded by the language, but it's not a condition. You can be surrounded by the language and not learn. You can be in an area where they don't speak the language and you can learn. Okay, I mean, how many can I speak? You know, I have some understanding of, now with Arabic and Persian, up to 20 languages. Probably 10 of them I can just turn on and speak. The others, I would need varying degrees of warm-up. 2 languages at the same time, that's what I've been talking about. I'm working on Persian and Arabic right now, and I am making progress in both of them. I would make faster progress if I were focused on one, but I am enjoying doing both. How many? What are your thoughts on Benny's style of not using the books and going outside and learning the street way? Benny claims it works for him. I just don't see it. If I were to go to, I don't know, Morocco, I go up to someone in the street and just start using a few words of Arabic. What can I talk about? Who has the patience to humor me? Unless I pay them as a tutor, I just don't see it. I think you have to get the language in you from outside. It has to come from a source, a book, an audio, or a speaker. And you have to somehow be able to get that in you and make sense of it and develop that comprehension before you can just go out and speak. Could you speak a little more slowly? Okay, I will speak more slowly. So Rich says his friend is working on the mini stories, should be done in a week or 2. Thanks for the help. Okay, thank you, Rich, for organizing these Georgian mini stories. How to develop a language core before starting reading. You know, the reading gives you the language, reading and listening. I don't believe there is such a thing as a language core, the basics, that you got this sort of foundation in the language and now you're going to go ahead and learn it. You are learning it as you are reading it, as you are listening. And some fundamental concepts in the language you will continue to get wrong for a long, long time. So you don't nail down the basics, but you gradually become more and more familiar with the language, somewhat like the jigsaw puzzle. If I find someone to do the Hungarian mini stories, you can, yes, just send me an email, steve@link.com, and I will send you the mini story file. And if you can get someone to do them in Hungarian, the audio has to be clear. Oh, one thing I should point out, and also for Rich, ideally, because in some languages, male sort of words change depending on whether the speaker is male or female. So ideally, we would have both male and female narrators. And it's obvious from the story. And these are typically done on an Android or an iPhone. That sound quality is good enough as long as the person speaks. Probably a good idea to give us a sample of the audio before you get too far along. But send me an email, steve@link.com. Can you learn a language without books and learning through the environment? Yeah, I don't. I like books. What do you recommend in English literature? Difficult for me to say because it's a matter of what people are interested in. Like personally, I like 19th century literature. I enjoy Balzac in French. I enjoy Turgenev in Russian. But some people don't like that. Some people like modern. So it's really a matter of what you're interested in. And I would recommend finding books, say in literature, where you can access both the audiobook and the ebook, even if you have to pay for them. Because an ebook, you know, there's a lot of learning opportunity there. I did that for Polish, for Ukrainian. You can bring them into Link as books, and then you can work through the words and phrases, and then go away and listen to the audiobook. Okay, it's harder to read English novels than technical and science books. Of course it is. Novels are very difficult. Yeah, the easiest is history or newspapers and stuff like that. But technical or science books are easy only if you are familiar with the subject matter. If you're not familiar with those scientific or technical contexts, it's not so easy at all. Yeah, so keep it real. Yes, just send me an email and I will get you the file. Do you think differently when you speak many languages? I don't know. Hello, Steve. Could you give some tips to learn grammar and how to deal with grammar drills? The way I deal with grammar drills is I don't do them. I gradually get a sense of the language by learning words and phrases. And so that naturally I start to produce the language more and more accurately. I remember with German, when I stopped trying to memorize the case endings, my German improved. Russian, there are things there like the aspect of verbs of motion, cases. No matter how much you study the rules and the tables, you're never going to nail it down until you have absorbed enough of the language that you gradually become more accurate. Hello, Steve. I'm going on a trip to France this summer. I was wondering what aspects of the language I should focus on leading up to the trip, whatever. Okay, I would say go and find things of interest. I don't know your level. I would go and look at what's in our library at Link. If you are beyond that level, go and buy an audiobook where you can find the corresponding ebook and where you like the voice of the narrator and just get the language in you. And that way you will come to France, understand what people are saying, and you'll be able to progress more quickly. Unfortunately, Arabic script is so tiny. I just can't read this on the fly. Do you speak a Dravidian language? I don't, but I think we had someone offer to provide us the many stories in that language. And if we get that, we will put it up as a language in LingQ. Is YouTube a good place to learn Chinese? Sure, it depends what your interests are. If you have a Chinese YouTube video with subtitles in Chinese, these can be imported into LingQ as learning material. Okay, I like Keith Swain. I know Keith Swain. He's a good friend of mine, a very nice person. Can you attract women by speaking their native language? What can I say? Go out and give it a try. I do not mean to bother you, but one of the admins has talked about posting Vietnamese and Thai mini stories about a month ago. Are you still planning on this? It's the same. If we get the mini stories done of a sufficient quality, we will put them up. I don't think we have received this in Vietnamese or Thai yet. Okay, Ahmed Muhammad, I'm having language burnout at the moment, then just leave it. How to go from B1 to B2, it's a long road, but hopefully you're starting to access interesting content so that it's a long but enjoyable road as you discover interesting things through the language. Can you get fluent in Italian in 6 months if you already know Spanish? Absolutely, I think that's very doable. Why do you think Japanese are not good at learning languages? I'm Japanese. Okay, first of all, I don't like the sort of generalization, so-and-so. Like I've heard the Chinese are no good at learning languages. When I was in China, the students at university were phenomenal. You know, I think there are problems in Japan in the way the languages are taught. I think katakana is a problem because katakana is, for those not familiar, in Japanese they have the Chinese characters, kanji. They have hiragana, which is a phonetic script based on syllables. And then they have a parallel phonetic script for foreign words, for example. Now, because it's a syllable-based script, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, therefore it doesn't break it down into k, a, ka, it's ka. So therefore, it's very difficult to effectively represent a word in English using katakana. So if a Japanese person sees a word in English, oh, how is that pronounced? And they read the katakana, very bad, very bad. The only way to get around that is to basically remove katakana from any language instruction, rely on either the Latin alphabet, but that's not going to, I mean, English is in the Latin alphabet. Unfortunately, English is not very consistent in how it's written. Mind you, the question was not just English, the question was learning languages. So yeah, get rid of katakana, do a lot of listening and reading, which is quite popular in Japan. And then, but I think in Japan, two other things, I find that there's a lot of this sort of eikaiwa emphasis on sitting around and just talking. That's not going to improve you very much if you're sitting there with 5 other Japanese people. And the third of it is a tremendous focus on tests, TOEIC and these other tests. I think that they should focus entirely on comprehension, enjoying the language, reading and listening, and then when you go to speak, just speak. But overcoming the katakana handicap is probably a major reason. Steve, it's not the case in Georgian, but there is a question of formal with older people versus informal with younger people. What should we use in the translations? You know, what is the average person? That's a good question because I would go for the informal. Quick answer, I would go for the informal because I don't think a Georgian is going to be offended if a foreigner speaks informal way. And the mini stories are just a place to get started. And anybody who is going to learn Georgian will be exposed to a lot of additional content. So they'll learn one form through the mini stories and gradually they'll pick up the other forms. You don't want to be too casual. I always find that if you can get a neutral version of the language that's not too slangy and yet at the same time not too formal. I mean, it comes up in Japanese in the same way. Just go for sort of the way most people would speak in typical everyday situations, if that's helpful. So there's nothing you need to do before you start reading. Well, yeah, that's why you work at LingQ. You hear 30 seconds, you try and read it, you look up words, and then gradually you're taking off bites that are 30 seconds, 60 seconds, minute and a half, 2 minutes. That's the whole process. Well, you know, are there days when I lack motivation? Yeah, some days I'm more motivated than others. But there are easy things to do, like just listening, or you know, if I'm reading now, it's tiring for me to read in Arabic, so I make sure I have the sound on, so I'm just following along. So I'm kind of cheating because I'm hearing the words. I'm not forcing myself to read it. But if I'm tired, then I'm just going to do that, and I find that quite enjoyable. Varying your activities is a good way to be motivated. But if you're completely not motivated, then don't do it. Steve, we читали Пана Смирнова. Якщо так, то враження. Якщо ні, то обов'язково. Okay, I will look up that Pana Smirnovo, and thank you, Jaco. Will having friends or a girlfriend help you learn a language faster? No, but having friends and a girlfriend is good. It's a good thing to do. Have friends. No. All joking aside, if that person, your friend, girlfriend, friend, is used to speaking to you in a language other than the language you're learning, they may not help you very much. But if they will agree to talk to you in the language you're learning, of course that's helpful. Drug z Россия, okay, привет. I love LingQ, but sometimes I want to read from real books. How much should I understand to get something else? Should I write down, translate? Okay, I too certainly like reading real books. When I read real books, I don't look anything up. You know, variety is good. Doing things, using different materials. It's relaxing to read a book. But when I read a book, my experience has been that looking up the word, I never remember it. I write it down on a list. I never review the list. So I just read, and whatever I get out of it, I get out of it. Can I start 2 or 3 languages at the same time? You know, you can try anything and see what you're comfortable doing. I started Arabic first, then Persian. I don't think I would start 2 languages at the same time from scratch. I wouldn't do that, but maybe it works for you. Okay, I don't know enough about AGATT and Katsumoto to comment. Have you found that you struggle with more listening or reading, especially in silent? Reading is more difficult. I think I answered that. Okay, I don't, with regard to Moses, I don't know the details of his learning approach. I only know that he is very successful and has learned many languages and has a very nice, relaxing style. 你好，请问现在在介绍什么呢? I don't understand. Okay, do you think that vocabulary is the most difficult part of learning any language? No, nothing is particularly difficult, but the vocabulary is important. It's key. You need to build up a large passive vocabulary, some of which eventually becomes activated. How to start from scratch, especially French. Again, LingQ, because it has beginner material. You can read it, listen to it, look up words, and just keep doing that. 好像是 Do you consider it weird to try to practice with people at any chance possible? I don't do it. I don't want to say it's weird. I just don't do it. Thank you for your videos. Give me motivation. Should we always write on paper the words we've just learned? I never do. Okay, good. With that, I'm going to call it. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be back together on Wednesday. Bye for now.